She did not seem the wifely sort, he thought, for there seemed nothing soft and compliant about her. Were she a lad, she would make a good seaman or guard. Something of determination was settled over her features. He noted strength and, strangely, an isolation. Though she was surrounded by people, she seemed all alone within herself. He shrugged and drank deeply. A plate was virtually dropped before him, the gravy from the stew slopping over the sides and onto the table. A few greasy drips fell to the leg of his breeches, and he scowled at the serving maid. It was the best pair of pants he owned.
"You'll pay the keeper, sir,"
the maid who served him said.
"There ain't no rooms, but your horse is stabled. Armand says you can bed with him if you've a mind to."
Rodney nodded absently, but looked at the wench closely. This copper-haired lass seemed to fit the tavern scene. She was not what one would call pretty, except after too much ale, but neither was she hard to look at. She was short and full-breasted, and her curls bounced around her face. Her lips were red and her smile quick and eager. He had observed her earlier, and found that she did not put unnecessary distance between herself and the patrons.
"That's a fine coat, my lord,"
she said, her voice something of a whine.
"A gift from a beautiful woman,"
Rodney confided.
"You're from London, my lord?"
she asked. He nodded once and waited for her next question.
"King's messenger?"
Rodney shook his head.
"Not exactly, mistress."
"Have you seen him then, the king? I've seen him. It weren't close, but—"
"You've been to London?"
"For the coronation. I was a bit young then, but me pop was selling his pots and bowls. Mostly to the nobles, you see. Me pop's pots and bowls is the best in the south of England."
Rodney smiled at the maid and wondered about her age. She was probably not over 17 years either, but seemed older. Perhaps it was the atmosphere in the inn that aged her.
"You're noble, my lord."
He smiled at her. The question was strange, only in that it hadn't come sooner. If one's clothing was substantial, one's hat plumed, and one's horse decent, there was always that possibility. Children and young women questioned men who travelled and tried to find a way to determine their wealth. Many would trade the country life for the excitement of the city, and this lively lass would gladly trade what she had for a pocketful of lies.
"Gert!"
the innkeeper shouted from behind her.
"I hear ya!"
she bellowed back, turning away from Rodney. It was then that he was clear on the difference between the maids. This one called Gert was tough, at least as tough and quick with her retort as her employer. In this setting, the lass who poured and served the ale had to be tolerant of the smells and foul language. The other maid, Alice, seemed to detest her chore. She had not smiled or tried to talk to the patrons, and a serving wench had to be resistant to the groping hands, or even appreciative of them. The bouncy little tart called Gert seemed to consider the grabbing and fondling a compliment of sorts. He realized that he was musing about these maids because it was easier than thinking of the business that had failed. Charlotte Bellamy had failed him, when all should have gone well. Fergus Bellamy had not been a rich man, but he had possessed a large estate west of London. He was barren to fertile lands and hard-working people. When his daughter Charlotte was born, his wife died. For a while, Fergus could manage with a wet nurse and a small staff of servants within the manor to care for the child. But then Cromwell had usurped all of England, sending nobles fleeing in every direction. Fergus went where one might expect a loyal royalist to go, in the same direction that Charles, the then Prince of Wales, had gone. Charlotte was sent to Fergus's sister, a woman much older and not as well-to-do as Fergus, while Fergus fought by the side of young Charles throughout the years preceding the Restoration. After 11 years of exile, Charles returned to England to claim the throne. Fergus did not immediately rush to his daughter's side, though he saw her once or twice after the coronation. He had petitioned the king to restore his family lands, but Charles was so besieged with petitions that he had not acted on Fergus's quickly. It was not